Paolo Banchero has been super impressive so far during his tenure here with Team USA on the FIBA World Cup stage. I'm recording this after his game today against New Zealand, where he was their leading scorer, put up 21 points, 4 rebounds, and 4 blocks off the bench. If you're an Orlando fan, you're very happy with that performance because, for one, you got to see a lot of things from him this game that you wanted to see him improve upon. The three-point shooting was there. He knocked down 2 3-pointers in that game, one off the dribble, one off the catch, and defensively, he's shown a lot on the stage so far. He had 4 blocks today, I think, defensively the entire way through. Also through exhibition action, he's been pretty impressive. Those are two major points of improvement for Paolo Banchero heading into year two. And we're seeing him do it a little bit here for Team USA. As I said, a couple of 3 balls, which is huge. That's that one stride I really want to see him make is his perimeter shooting, whether it's off the catch or off the dribble. It'll unlock a lot more in his game. This is already a dude who was 20 a game in his rookie season. So it was amazing to see those flashes from him here against New Zealand. Really impressive. And I don't think we realize that he's one of the most impressive under 25 guys in the league today. And I think he's one of the more impressive rookie of the year players we've seen of the last 10 years, right? Obviously, there's Luka and there's a number of guys who were impressive in their rookie seasons. But I think with Paolo, statistically, he may not have been as good as Luka or a couple of other guys you can name who've won the last 10 rookie of the years. But I think it's just his game. And I think it's just his ceiling and his upside. You saw what he did in year one, and you're like, man, if this dude rounds out X amount of parts of his game, we always talk about who's the future face of the league, who's the future number one player in basketball. Paolo Banchero is a guy who's going to be within that conversation. You hear a lot of players around the league right now talk about his maturity, talk about his poise. He's a young guy who came in with some solid mid-range game. You don't see that a lot. The size, being able to handle the ball and the footwork he has at 6'10". There's just so much maturity in his game at this young of an age that we saw in year one. And as I said, it may not have been as impressive as Luka's rookie season or, a couple of other guys' rookie seasons. But it's just we saw so much from him in year one. You just got an idea of how high his ceiling is. We saw him do all that with still some parts of his offensive game to round out. And sometimes when we look at these rookies, we forget, especially with number one overall picks, right? They always seem to get overshadowed by the number one overall picks in the next season. So we saw it happen with DeAndre Ayton, right? His rookie season, he was 16-10 through 71 games and immediately outshined because of the Zion Williamson hype. Then we fast forward a couple of years. Anthony Edwards almost averaged 20 his rookie year and is immediately outshined by the Cade Cunningham hype. Then Cade Cunningham has a pretty solid rookie season, misses a good amount of games, I think played 64, but was impressive, and he gets outshined by the Paolo Banchero hype. Paolo Banchero, amazing rookie year. Like I said, I think he had one of the most impressive rookie seasons of the last couple of years, just based off of what we saw from him in those glimpses. And now the Wemby thing is happening. And the Wemby hype, I really feel like, is making us forget how good Paolo Banchero was in his first season and what he can end up becoming. We see it happen a lot, right? We see the newer guys in the newer draft classes and the hype they get always outshine the players in the draft before them. We forget the strides that they can end up making. And I kind of feel like Paolo Banchero, we're forgetting that this guy can potentially be a number one player in this game. I'm not talking about the next 5 years or whatever, but with how mature his game looks at this point and with the experience and the exposure he's getting right now with Team USA, he can definitely get there at some point in time. And I really feel like we've kind of forgotten that so early, so quickly because of the Wemby hype. And that's taking nothing away from Victor Wembanyama, right? We're talking about one of the most hyped up draft prospects since LeBron James, probably the most hyped up draft prospect since LeBron James, rightfully so, right? Being 7'5" plus with that skill set is obviously something to hype up, right? Everything, not taking anything away from him. But we can't let that hype make us forget about the guys that came in those previous years, those under 25 guys who still have a lot to build upon. I feel like Anthony Edwards, we're reminded of how good he is because of how well he's playing on the international landscape. But for a minute, I kind of felt like people forgot about how good Ant could be because of the guys that came after him, because of the young guys who shined in their rookie seasons after he came into the league, right? We see it happen year in and year out. And I just really hope that Paolo Banchero doesn't fall back and have this amazing year two, but it gets overshadowed because of Wemby's year one. You know what I mean? So it's been impressive seeing Paolo do this. As I say with a lot of guys, this experience playing for Team USA is going to mean a lot for them going into this next season. For Anthony Edwards especially, right? Being the best guy for Team USA is going to bring a lot to Minnesota next season, right? Tyrese Halliburton as well. You know, Jalen Brunson too, who's already been, you know, in big game moments. He's going to bring that experience over to that Knicks team, and I think they're going to have a pretty solid second season. Same goes here for Paolo Banchero, who's coming back to an Orlando Magic team who I think is going to be one of the most impressive teams in the league next season. Playoffs, maybe not. Play-in, yes. I would put money on them being a play-in team. But what they showed through the last 57 games last season, I know that's a very specific number, but through like a 57 span, the last 57 games of the season during that span, what they showed was amazing. Defensively, they had one of the top defensive ratings in the NBA during that last 57 game span. And if you look at that roster and what they have coming into this coming season, they're going to get even more dangerous on that end. Wendell Carter is going to continue to make strides on the defensive end. He's already solid on that, you know, side of things. And as a rim protector, I think he's going to make huge strides. Jonathon Isaac is now back and fully healthy for the entirety of the season. What type of strides does Paolo make from a defensive standpoint? We've already seen him improve defensively here playing for Team USA. What type of strides does Franz Wagner make defensively? Jalen Suggs was really good defensively his first couple of years here. What types of strides does he make? So to be one of the younger teams in the league today and be so elite on the defensive end, that's really rare. You don't really see young teams be amazing defensively. There's a team that did it last season and they made the playoffs or the play-in, and that was the OKC Thunder. There was a period in time where the Thunder were one of the top defensive teams in the NBA from a ratings perspective, and they may have fell off by the end of the year, but their defense kept them afloat. So they were able to do that with a roster that didn't really have all of its pieces. Imagine Orlando now. Imagine how good, think about how good they were defensively last season, and think about how good they're going to be this coming season with the newer guys that are going to be on this roster. It's really going to be something to watch. And from a lineup perspective, they are so unique. Talk about Banchero's size. We talk about his versatility. Talk about Franz Wagner as well. 6'10", being able to bring the ball up court, knock down the three ball off the catch. He was 40% on off the catch 3-pointers this previous season. Also playing on this international landscape, you know, this time around for Germany, he's probably going to be their best player. So he's going to bring that experience over here to Orlando. There's Wendell Carter, right, who's been one of the more solid young big guys in the game, who I think can explode for an all-star caliber year at some point. As I mentioned before, there's also Jonathon Isaac. So from a roster perspective, they're really unique. Their makeup is really unique. What do you do with the team that has John Isaac, Wendell Carter, Paolo Banchero, Franz Wagner, all versatile players for their heights and their positions on the same roster? So there's so much to work with on this team from a physicality perspective and from a versatility perspective, and that's what makes them so unique. I feel like Detroit, the Pistons with the moves they made, you know, the last couple of years have kind of outshadowed what Orlando's been able to do, and rightfully so. But this Magic team, they may not have had the offseason Detroit did, especially with Detroit picking up who they did in the draft, or even Houston, you know, with them making the moves they made. They may not have had that great of an offseason from a transactional perspective. But when you look at what they did last season and the slight improvements they made this offseason, also with more guys getting more experiences overseas, playing in this tournament, and more guys being present, now with John Isaac being fully healthy, they're right in that conversation as far as young teams who are going to make major leaps coming into this season. They're going to be absolutely scary. I think Franz Wagner and Paolo Banchero are one of the most unique 1-2 punches in all of basketball. This was a team that also needed to make three-point shooting strides. They picked up Jet Howard, who I think was an underrated pickup in the draft from Michigan, one of the best off-the-catch three-point shooters. Gary Harris is going to continue to make strides from a volume perspective, shooting the three ball. Paolo Banchero is going to continue to become better from a three-point shooting perspective, and I think we'll see more of that here on this FIBA World Cup stage for him, right? His improvements from the three-point line. It's going to be very impressive to see how far this Magic team goes, and there's still going to be youth, right? There's still going to be that entire thing to take into equation, right? There's still going to be some maturity issues, although it wasn't that much of an issue for them last season. There's a lot they can build off of, and I'm really excited to see what they do. Extremely excited. Like I said, their second half of the season, that second 57-game span for them to close the year out, was one of the best for any young team in the league. They had the best improvement from a wins perspective out of any team in the East last season. They improved by 12 wins. last season. That was third best also from a team improvement perspective in the NBA as a whole. They're going to be very dangerous. Again, it's going to come down to maturity, which I'm not worried about at all, especially since their two best guys are competing for a gold medal on this FIBA World Cup stage. And it's also going to come down to that shooting, right? I mentioned, I think they're going to be an elite defensive team, considering how good they were last season and considering who they have on the roster now. Now you got to be able to knock down shots, right? Is Jet Howard going to make that much of a difference? Is Gary Harris going to get his three-point volume up? Because as a team, their volume was low and their percentage was low. Is Paolo Banchero going to make strides from a three-point shooting perspective? What's Jonathon Isaac going to do from a three-point shooting perspective, right? Everything comes together if this team can knock down shots. But everything else is there for them, the versatility, the talent. I really believe this is the most talented Magic roster since the Dwight Howard days, right? There were some years kind of in between where they did make a couple of playoff runs, but this team is one of the most talented, if not the most talented young squad in all of basketball. And as I said, the shooting is something to figure out. And there's also some roster things to figure out. I know I just hyped up the roster, but there are a lot of guards here on this team where I feel like a few of them aren't going to be here within the next couple of years. They're kind of going down this rebuild path. There's Marquelle Fultz, who was great for them last season. Cole Anthony as well. Jalen Suggs, who was great defensively. Now they went and drafted Anthony Black. So there's that to figure out. I do feel like they've kind of overloaded on guards the last couple of seasons, but their issues don't outweigh their improvements at all, right? They don't. They did a lot this offseason. They did make a lot of moves, but there are a lot of guys who are just making internal development, which is the thing that I don't think we think about a lot with the NBA is every team improvement is just judged based off of who they're able to get in the offseason. But we don't really trust the process. We don't really trust the idea of guys just getting better and making improvements or taking certain experiences to make improvements in their game. Let's look at it with Denver, right? Denver didn't make major roster upgrades, right? I mean, Jamal Murray came back out of the injury and they did go out there and get Bruce Brown, but there weren't any major roster upgrades. They just got better, right? Or they just played basketball at a better level than they played the previous seasons, right? I mean, that core was essentially almost the same as they were in the bubble, right? This is a team that's been a number one seed before. They just played basketball at a higher level because it may have been a mindset change. There may have been some systematic changes, whatever the case may be. We have to trust that process that just because teams aren't going to make big moves, right, they can't get better, right? Orlando may not have made all the biggest moves in the world. They got a couple of good guys on the roster. They have guys coming back. But I think internally they're going to improve from a growth perspective, and that's really going to come down to the point that Franz Wagner and Paolo Banchero, their two best players, are getting a lot of valuable experiences playing on this FIBA World Cup stage. So Orlando's going to be extremely dangerous this season. I think they're going to be a playing team. I think at the best, that's where they'll be at. I don't think anybody in the East fell off that much for them to completely knock on the door for the playoffs, for a lock for a playoff spot. If we look at the Eastern Conference right now, you know, one of the only teams that really is going to take a drastic fall from where they're at. And this was a team that didn't even make the playoffs, in the first place. You know, you could say the Raptors, right? Like they pretty much know they're going to blow this roster up. They pretty much know at this point they're going to go, into rebuild mode. The Bulls, right? I think they're just going to hover around the same spot they were at last season. The Nets are still going to be in the mix, and there's going to be some competition from those teams that missed it, right? Detroit's going to be competitive. Indiana's obviously going to be more competitive. So I don't know if they're actually going to make the playoffs this year, but I think on the high side, they're going to be a playing team. And again, that's a big improvement from where they were last season. So I really think we have to pay attention to this trajectory that Orlando's on. They've gotten consistently better year in and year out. They made a big jump last season. And now with Jonathon Isaac back and with Franz Wagner and Paolo Banchero playing basketball, at this high of a level on the international stage, they're going to be something very dangerous to watch defensively. I think offensively, they're going to take a big leap. They're going to be fun. And I can't wait to see how things turn out for them this coming season.